Welcome to the deep dive. You're probably here because you need to get up to speed on hybrid threats in Europe, like right now.
And you don't want to wade through mountains of reports.
Exactly. So we've done that for you. We've looked at the research to pull out the key stuff.
Our goal today, make sense of what these threats actually are, who they're hitting, and what Europe's doing about it. A clear path through the complexity.
Okay, so let's start there. Hybrid threats. It sounds complex. What are we actually talking about fundamentally?
Well, yeah, there isn't one single definition everyone agrees on, but the core idea, across academic and government thinking, it's about coordinated actions.
Coordinated and harmful. Right. Using a mix of means.
Precisely. A mix of military and non-military tools. Think information manipulation, cyber attacks, economic arm twisting, covert political stuff.
Okay.
Even coercive diplomacy or the threat of force. The aim is always to undermine. The target could be a state, an institution, even a company.
And it's meant to be subtle, below outright war.
That's a key part. The Hybrid Center of Excellence, the COE in Helsinki, they define it as targeting systemic vulnerabilities in democracies, exploiting that gray zone where detection and attribution are difficult.
Right, hitting weak spots below the threshold of, like, a formal attack.
Exactly. Some call it a buzzword, but the tactics keep evolving.
So what about the official EU or NATO takes? Are they different?
They focus more on the operational side, for policy making. They stress the coordinated use of various instruments, diplomatic, military, economic, tech.
By states and non-state actors.
Yes, that's important too. Both can be involved. And they're laser focused on exploiting vulnerabilities. NATO also highlights the speed and scale how technologies change the game.
Makes sense. The EU Commission definition sounds similar. Coordinated mix of measures, exploiting vulnerabilities below actual warfare.
Understanding those vulnerabilities is crucial for mitigation, obviously, and people try to categorize these threats.
How so?
Well, by the means used, like cyber versus economic, or how deniable it is, or the goal just interference, or a bigger operation, maybe even leading up to military action. There's also this core model: actors, domains, tools, phases.
And you mentioned domains. The EU listed 13.
Yeah, 13 interconnected domains: infrastructure, cyber, space, economy, military, culture, society.
Wow, everything.
Pretty much. Public administration, legal systems, intelligence, diplomacy, politics, information. The interconnectedness is key. An attack in one area can cascade.
Like a cyber attack hitting energy, which then sparks social unrest you mentioned.
Exactly. So maybe a working definition for us could be coordinated, synchronized actions, military and non-military means, multiple domains, state or non-state actors, malign intent.
Exploiting vulnerabilities, undermining democracy, eroding trust.
All for strategic goals below conventional war, often designed to be ambiguous, hard to pin down.
Okay, that's clear. So who's most vulnerable? The public sector seems like an obvious target.
Absolutely. Their role in governance, critical services, public order makes them prime targets. Think election interference, manipulating public opinion, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure.
Disinformation campaigns.
Right. Exploiting weak governance, trying to hinder foreign policy, or just gum up public services. It's tough because these threats are complex, ambiguous, and sometimes our legal systems just haven't caught up with the tech.
And what about smaller businesses, SMEs? They're the backbone of the EU economy, but maybe less prepared.
That's a huge vulnerability. They often lack the cybersecurity budget or awareness of bigger firms, but they're plugged into critical supply chains.
Ah, so they can be a way in, a weak link.
Exactly. Used as proxies. Or just hit directly by things like geopolitical tensions, tariffs. Management awareness can be low, security costs high, finding specialists is hard.
And the big players, multinational corporations.
They're targets and potential vectors. Their massive digital infrastructures often intersect with national systems, making cyber attacks potentially devastating.
Global supply chains again, too.
Definitely vulnerable to geopolitical shocks and cyber threats. Plus, disinformation can really hammer their brand and trust. And their dependence on digital logistics is another weak point.
Managing this must be a nightmare for them, especially across borders.
Yeah, conflicting regulations, needing integrated threat models, the sheer difficulty of detection and attribution. It's a major challenge.
So what's being done? Are there frameworks to manage this?
The EU is trying. The Security Union strategy aims to mainstream this thinking. There's a joint framework for cooperation. And the EU Hybrid Toolbox provides response options, civilian and military.
A whole-of-society approach.
That's the buzz phrase, yeah. Better situational awareness, more cooperation, especially with NATO. But implementation has limits, distinguishing threats, getting everyone on the same page. It takes time.
And NATO's role, is it just military deterrence?
Deterrence is key, and they've said a serious hybrid attack could trigger Article 5 collective defense. But they also cooperate heavily with the EU cyber defense, resilience, strategic comms, exercises. The hybrid COE helps bridge that.
They have specific teams for this too, right?
Our hybrid support teams, yeah, to help allies.
Are there common themes emerging, like best practices?
Definitely seeing that whole of society idea in action. Better detection, more info sharing, government private, military civilian, international. Nordic countries are often cited. Robust cybersecurity, positive counter narratives, those support teams and exercises, those are becoming standard ideas.
Technology keeps coming up. It seems like a double-edged sword here.
Absolutely. It enables these threats, sophisticated cyber attacks, social media disinformation, deepfakes powered by AI, exploiting digital infrastructure. Hyperconnectivity is a vulnerability.
But it also makes managing them harder.
For sure. Attribution is harder with anonymity tools. Tech moves faster than laws. Information overload is real. The lines blur between war and peace, and those cascading effects we mentioned.
There's also a balance to strike, right? Security versus rights.
A huge dilemma. Countering disinformation without curbing free speech. Privacy concerns with surveillance needed for detection. Ensuring security measures are proportionate. Maintaining public trust is vital.
And underlying all this is the geopolitical situation.
Massively influential, Russia's actions, particularly regarding Ukraine and efforts to destabilize Europe, are a key factor.
China, too.
China's influence is growing economic espionage, disinformation, leveraging economic ties. The war in Ukraine itself has escalated Russian hybrid activities and forced a security rethink in Europe.
The specific regions are hotspots.
Places like the Arctic or the Balkans see heightened regional competition, which often fuels hybrid tactics. And the impacts differ. MNCs worry about supply chains, public sector about political stability, SMEs about economic coercion.
So pulling it all together, it's a really significant, constantly shifting challenge for Europe. Everything's interconnected.
It really is. Which leaves us with something to think about, maybe.
Yeah.
Given how fast these threats change and how tangled up technology and geopolitics are, what deep, fundamental shifts do European organizations, public and private, need to consider for their long-term security? Beyond just reacting to the latest incident, that's the bigger question, isn't it?